Benin bronzes made from brass mined in West Germany. Study finds. Metal used for West African artworks was acquired from Manila bracelets. The grim currency of the slave trade. Scientists have discovered that some of the Benin bronzes were made with brass mined thousands of miles away in the German Rhineland. The Edo people in the Kingdom of Benin, modern Nigeria, created their extraordinary sculptures with melted-down brass manila bracelets, the grim currency of the transatlantic slave trade between the 16th and 19th centuries. While rarely found in archaeological excavations on land, they have been retrieved in substantial numbers from the wrecks of vessels that had been transporting them. In carrying out the largest study of these bracelets, a team of German researchers compared their metal with metallic ores and mines across Europe before tracing them to the Rhineland in western Germany. Dr. Tobias Skowronek, who led the study, said, "This is the first time a scientific link has been made. The Benin bronzes are the most famous ancient works of art in West Africa. Where the enormous volumes of metal came from and how Benin got its brass has long been a mystery." Dr. Sean Kingsley, an archaeologist and editor-in-chief of Recwatch magazine, which specializes in the sunken past, said, "Skowronek has discovered that the Benin bronzes were made from brass mined around Cologne. Nobody had a clue, and it's quite an eye-opener. It's a big deal within the very high-profile Benin bronzes art and history world." Hundreds of Benin bronzes were seized by British forces in 1897 when the Royal Court of Benin was razed to the ground. Today, the sculptures are in museums and galleries in Britain and elsewhere. Nigeria has long called for their return. Germany is one of the few countries that is actively repatriating its bronzes. Other institutions that have done so include the Horniman Museum in London. Manillas, derived from the Latin for hand or bracelet, were a currency used by Britain, Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, France and Denmark to trade with West Africa in gold and ivory, as well as enslaved people. The scientific study focused on 67 examples collected from 5 shipwrecks off the UK, Spain, Ghana and the US. Dating between 1524 and 1843, these were ships of English, Portuguese and Dutch origin. They include a Royal African Company slaver that went down in the Channel. Skowronek, based at the Technical University of Georg Agricola in Bochum, Germany, said, "Manillas were manufactured in staggering volumes. A contract between the German Fugger merchant house and the Portuguese king. Dating back to 1548. Lists an order for 1.4 meters manillas to be made ready within 3 years, between 1519 and 1522. Lisbon sent 150,000 manillas a year to their trading fort at Elmina on the coast of Ghana, the heart of the gold and slave trade." He added, "European societies designed manillas solely to buy West African goods. From humans to animal hides. In the 16th century, the German mines were thought to be too exhausted to make it worthwhile deep mining and pumping out rivers of water. But the great volume of manillas that the slave trade needed made industrialists think again." Last October, The Guardian reported on his team's previous findings, that the early British enslavers sourced copper from Cornwall to create manillas. The latest findings will be published on Wednesday in the journal PLOS ONE. Kingsley's Recwatch is also screening a short film about the Benin bronzes story. Benin bronzes made of German brass. Many of the famous Benin bronzes pillaged by British colonial officers in 1897 are made of brass manillas from the German Rhineland, new research shows. For years, researchers have puzzled over the origins of metals used for the famous brass sculptures and plaques pillaged during Britain's 1897 colonial capture of the Kingdom of Benin, present-day Nigeria. The vast majority of the Benin bronzes were pillaged during that initial raid, before the UK took over the brass trade in West Africa. There are over 3,000 Benin bronzes in total, but most are displayed in European and North American institutions, like the Ethnological Museum of Berlin and the British Museum in London. Only a few are currently held in museums in Nigeria. Benin bronze metal source a mystery. Researchers have long suspected that the brass used to create the impressive sculptures was transported to Benin via Portuguese trade routes in the 15th century. But they haven't been able to pinpoint where the metals originated in Europe. A study published Wednesday by researchers at the Technische Hochschule Georg Agricola in the German city of Bochum offers evidence that much of the material used to create Benin's 16th and 17th century bronzes came from Germany's Rhineland region. The Benin bronzes are the most famous ancient works of art in all West Africa, study author Tobias Skowronek said in a statement. Finally, we can prove the totally unexpected. The brass used for the Benin masterpieces, long thought to come from Britain or Flanders, was mined in Western Germany. This is the first time a scientific link has been made. Manillas a possible source. Historians have long suspected the Benin bronzes were crafted out of manillas, distinctive horseshoe-shaped items shipped to Africa by the Portuguese in the late 15th century. Manillas were made from bronze, copper or brass and used as currency. They were originally made in several European countries at different times in history, then shipped to Africa via European traders. Researchers thought that by tracing the history of manillas, they could find the source of the brass used in the Benin bronzes. Work by Rolf Denk, author of the West African Manila currency, identified three main types of manillas used in West Africa between 1439 and 2019. Early manillas traded by the Portuguese known as tacoais, dated back to 1450. They were traded in the Kingdom of Benin and Elmina, present-day Ghana, and were made from metal originating in Germany. A second type were the Birmingham manillas, which were used from 1625 to 1949 in present-day southeast Nigeria. They were made from metals in the UK. A third type used from 1600 to 1914, Popo manillas, were distinct from both the Birmingham and the tacoais and traded in Ivory Coast. They were made in the UK, Netherlands, Portugal, and France. Manila Classification System cracks code. The new study from Germany has pieced the puzzle together using Denk's classification system combined with chemical analysis of manillas and Benin bronzes. The researchers analyzed around 70 manillas physically identifiable as tacoais from shipwrecks in African, American and European waters between the 16th and 19th centuries. The composition of the tacoais manillas, they found, was very similar to the composition of Benin bronzes. They both contained ores from Germany's Rhineland. The authors concluded that artisans in Benin likely melted down the manillas originating in Germany to make the Benin bronzes.
This is the moment Nigerians have been waiting for. After 125 years, these stolen treasures now returned home. A first step to right the wrongs of the colonial past, according to Germany's foreign minister at the handover in the capital Abuja.
The return of the bronzes today is therefore a crucial step towards addressing this chapter in the way that it should be addressed. Openly, frankly, with a willingness to critically assess one's own activities. And crucially, by listening closely to the concerns of those who were the victims of colonial cruelties. It is the readiness to talk and to listen that made today's returns possible.
British soldiers looted the bronzes in 1897 from the palace in the Kingdom of Benin, now Nigeria. They were sold to collectors all over Europe. More than 1,000 ended up in German museums. Now, Germany has become the first former colonial power to hand back some of the artworks. More will follow in the coming years.
This study definitively identifies the Rhineland as the principal source of manillas at the opening of the Portuguese trade, the authors wrote in the study. Millions of these artifacts were sent to West Africa, where they likely provided the major, virtually the only, source of brass for West African casters between the 15th and the 18th centuries, including serving as the principal metal source of the Benin bronzes. The authors added that their research provides new insights into early Atlantic trade and African use of European goods.